And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 51. And here we are, Brooke. We are past the 50 mark. Welcome
That's
everyone.
pretty cool.
Yeah, welcome everyone to the show. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Amos Joseph, joined by my friend here, Brook Potter, who is in the UK, myself here in the US. Basically, the Shitlord Preachers podcast is where where both of us who've known each other for a few years now come together and have conversations about different social, cultural, and political issues. We're pretty much former preachers, hence the name, and now we're reformed shitlords. So, how's it going today, Brooke?
It's going good. It's going really good. It looks like we're coming into third winter out here in the UK, which is always fun. So winter is coming, as they say. I'm sure we have a lot to say on these things. I do have to apologize to the listeners. There are two psychotic crows that are outside my office at the moment, and I think they're trying to come in. I don't know. Maybe they need some financial advice or something. So if you do hear some cawing in the background, I do apologize. I can't do anything about it. But yeah, I figure I will give the listeners and the viewers a heads up for that. So doing well, excited. We have one more until we've done 52 episodes. That's a full year, isn't it?
Yep.
And are we doing something special for the occasion, Amos?
Probably not. I know we're having a guest next week, so
Strippers?
no.
Midgets and coke sellers?
How
How about we do the entire episode on mushrooms and acid?
Ooh, tempting.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited.
Anyways.
I'm excited for that. That's really cool.
But yeah, with the crows cawing, I was about to say, well, I know you've lost weight, but maybe they still think you look like Alfred Hitchcock.
I've got more hair than he did, so
Yeah. We need a side profile picture or something. But yeah, man, we were talking about the different things we wanted to get into today. One of which was now Avengers Endgame is a big one. Spoilers alert, everyone. I'm gonna have to splatter spoiler alert all over this episode. Make sure people don't just get mad at us. But what'd you think of the movie, Brooke?
It was good. It was good. I can't say that it was great. And there was no way that it was going to be able to live up to the previous episode. I mean, the previous one was, they really built it up and everything else.
Oh, Infinity War.
Infinity War. That's it. And there's absolutely no way they could really kind of reach that level of tension. And I'm getting a kind of echo. I don't know if that's. I don't know.
No, we're good.
From. Okay. But yeah, so I did enjoy it. It wasn't great. Yeah. There are a couple of things that I'm grateful for, but I will get into that in a minute. What did you think of the film?
I mean, I liked it. Compared to Infinity War, I can see in a way, although it was a longer movie, the flow tended to just kind of move along. There wasn't really as much of a build-up as Infinity War did have, because it was a lot of tension in Infinity War. It was, oh, he's getting this stone. Oh, he's getting that stone. There's a fight here. There's another fight here. Clawing at every last advantage to keep the stones away from him, and then he gets the last one, and it's this sort of, compared to other hero movies, there is a sort of struggle to just eventually lose.
Yes.
They lose. He snaps his fingers. Even the strongest Avenger, the strongest moves that everyone tried to pull off, it just still he snaps his fingers and half of all life dies. Now, interesting enough about that, so you hear half of all life. I didn't know this, but apparently according to the directors, they meant half of all life.
Right.
So crops, plant life.
Yeah.
I don't know if they meant that. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the aftermath of that was not just, oh, half the people, we've got all the animals. No, they died too. So your food supply is gone. Some parts of the world would have seen like upwards of like an 80% decimation in terms of like the countries, while
Right.
others may see like a small drop in population because it was just half. It wasn't really like
Oh, you mean
half in every.
Iceland?
Yeah. I mean, for all we know, this in this world that Thanos left behind, like, the US could have seen a larger population drop than maybe like some other countries.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. As I say, for me, I mean, now to get into the movie. So again, this is a second spoiler alert because we haven't really given up anything as yet. So,
yeah.
getting into the movie now, there is a plot in the film that revolves around time travel. And I always have issue with time travel because I think it's such a cheap way to resolve a conflict. The reason Infinity War was as impressive as it was is because every decision and every choice had real consequences.
Yeah.
Like, this is just, you're going to sacrifice yourself for the greater good, and it's the state of half the universe life at stake. But
Hmm.
the minute you introduce time travel, you realize that those choices don't have as much meaning, because in a sense you feel like you could just go back and make different choices. You could kind of change things in the past, sort of thing.
Right.
I mean, they tried to do some movie magic and some hocus pocus to get around that in this film. So apparently you really couldn't change the past, kind of thing, which didn't really make a lot of sense to me. But
You couldn't change the past that already happened.
right.
Diverging timelines and all this stuff, they started throwing that in, which got a little confusing.
Yeah, it did, because there clearly were divergent timelines, because they fucked up trying to get, what was it, the Space Stone, where Loki managed to escape.
And they don't
Uh,
really resolve what happened there.
well, right, Disney has his own series is going to be on the Disney streaming network, so there's a whole Loki series, so that's the opening door for that, obviously. But just the very act that happened, that's created an entirely new timeline, right? According to the law. And this has always been my issue. This was the issue that I had in Back to the Future, for instance. In Back to the Future, the second one, they Doc Brown and Marty McFly go into the future to do something about his kids, like Marty's kids. And we know the premise. Biff steals the sports almanac, steals the time machine, travels back to the 1950s, and gives the book to his younger self.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is he returned the time machine to the same timeline that Doc Brown and Marty were in, which is impossible because he's changed the past. He should go to the future of his rich and powerful self, and he didn't. These are the inconsistency problems that I have.
If they okay, yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
because they technically, by their own theories, they migrated timelines.
Right. So you
If they
can't
go back to 1985, the wrong one.
Yes.
They should have, because if they were still in that timeline, they should have been in the okay timeline. The timeline
right.
he created wouldn't have, because then
he
they're
wouldn't be able
following
to go back to it. Correct.
The timeline for him wouldn't change.
Right. Well, for who? Biff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it would. If he goes back to 1955, there'd be another Biff. So the future that he returns to, the 2015 that he returns to, would not be the 2015 with Marty and Doc, which was where they were in Glendale and everything was nice with hoverboards. It would be the dystopian future created by giving the almanac to himself.
And they could have remained consistent if they threw in some crazy.
Like if the future changed around Doc and Marty, I would have said, okay, I could live with that.
Okay. Or if they so let's say they somehow find out that he took it back. So then Doc has to use the future technology to create a second time machine to go back. Somehow he figures out he can go back to 1955 again.
Yeah.
To stop the split from happening, or
right.
to at least get
something
back.
like that. Yeah, something like that. But anyway, I mean that's a whole other movie genre. We're not getting, but you see my problem with the inconsistency of time travel.
I
So I
never
have
thought
this.
about that one.
Yeah, I have the same issue with the whole the Avengers situation, especially when Loki used the Tesseract to get out, escape the Shield custody and disappear. The minute he does that, their future has changed,
Right.
right? And the second thing, of course, there's a scene in the movie where Thor, well, we'll discuss Thor in a minute, but just to show like the problems that I had with it. There's a scene where he's talking to his mother. He's there with Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're about to like time jump back to I guess about 5 years from now. So, and before he goes, he reaches out, and Mjolnir comes to his hand, and he grabs it, and he's like, "Oh wow, I'm still worthy," and he takes it from that timeline to the present, which means all of those events that happened in the past where Thor needed Mjolnir are gone. Mjolnir is not even there,
Yeah.
right? So that's the kind of thing I have an issue with. And I gave it a pass because it really was a fantastic movie. I really tried to give these things a benefit of doubt. It did irk me a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, we had this conversation, and I was just like, "God damn it, Brooke! Stop thinking so much. Just watch the movie."
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
like Rick and Morty, Rick Sanchez. Don't think about it. Yeah,
Just go with it. And I did. I mean, I had to at the end of the day because I want to enjoy the film. But it's that's probably why I didn't think it was as good as it probably could be.
surprisingly, no, the trailer is showing a lot more.
Well, I
So
haven't seen the new trailers.
the new trailers are coming out. They're saying like, obviously, so they're putting out the fact that number one opening ever of all time.
Well, but that was a given. I would say, yeah, that was probably guaranteed.
So that was a big one. So then they showed a clip of Iron Man and Pepper Potts' Iron Man suit. If you didn't know, her name is actually Rescue. Is that character? That's
right.
Her persona.
Yeah.
So they show a scene of both of them when they were doing the back-to-back fighting, and then they showed a quick clip of big old bearded Thor, but you don't really make out what he's holding. You just see him with, of course, his new sort, but you just see the long hair and the beard. Spoiler alert, everyone! Thor gets fat.
Now, this is taking the internet by storm. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but people are very upset that some people are fat shaming Thor in the movie.
So
have you seen this?
I've heard a little bit about it. So for the listeners, well, I mean, yeah, everyone, for the people who have watched it, again, spoiler alert. Jeez, it is. This is the one movie that I'm like feeling bad about talking about. Like other movies, I've made things slip and stuff, and like, okay, it's not too bad. This one, it's like, okay, not spoiling anything. Excuse me, but basically the storyline goes, so we know what happened at the end of Infinity War, and immediately after they try to find out what happened to Thanos, we know he uses the space stone and disappears. Well, they find out when he makes a snap of the fingers, like energy gives off, so they can scan for that. They find out he's on some random planet, being Farmer Thanos, and he snapped his fingers again. They're like, what the heck? So then they go find him, and he's like fucked up pretty much. So using the gauntlet, for as powerful as he is, it still screws up his body. You can see the damage on his body's worse. So what he did was he used the stones to destroy the stones.
Yes.
He snapped to destroy the gauntlet was still there, but the stones like disintegrated. So then, the Avengers are there, and they want to they want some sort of revenge, and basically Thor first Thor chops his hand off to get the gauntlet off of him. And then halfway through the conversation, Thor just chops his head off.
Yes.
Thor's a little pissed.
Yes. And rightly so, because what happened, what he's dealing with.
Yeah. But that's kind of ridiculous though. Like one of the toughest guys in the Avengers because he missed. I mean, granted, it's a big one, but
Yes.
one loss, and so the result as a result of this loss, this. I mean, I don't know if it even
Not
touches
going for
on.
the head.
Yeah, I mean the whole. I mean, is this supposed to be? I'm not gonna get all like MRA or MGTOW on this, but is there something about like the fact that his masculinity is so fragile that he just like went off the deep end because of one loss like that?
I mean, it cost half the universe, including a lot of their friends. I don't think it's
Yeah,
as easy as saying one loss.
I
It's
get
it.
that. I get
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah. Because your choice, his choice, has affected everybody that he knows. Has affected the entire universe. That's a lot to. That's a lot
right.
to bear in that
But
respect.
yeah, basically, so the story jumps ahead 5 years, and you find out like Thor, as well as half of the Asgardians, are in this sort of settlement in like
Norway.
Scandinavia, somewhere. Norway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
New Asgard, and he's gained a few pounds, and he's with Korg and Meek playing Fortnite at his house.
I mean, it's a throwback to the Big Lebowski. I don't know if you've seen that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
Yeah, it's basically that scene where he's even got the shades and everything, right? And he's out of shape, like rummaging through pizza boxes, and just like everything's fine, we're having problems with the internet, it's giving trouble.
he's popping beer bottles with Stormbreaker.
Now I have to say I laughed when I saw it, right? I thought it was really well done. But a lot of people are very upset that Thor, put on weight,
He,
right?
the one guy that the internet is jumping to.
Yeah, I thought we were beyond this. Isn't this the time of progressivism and no more fat shaming and all this other kinds of
No, no.
stuff?
See, it's fat. I'm thinking it's fat shaming when it's a girl, but if it's a guy, then. But then I realized because he's probably one of the best looking men in Hollywood, at least probably by public opinion, the people will actually try to defend him.
Right, right. I mean, I think it's great, right? So, like, you and I, Amos, right now are walking around with the body of a god, right? Because we've got that whole thing going on, right? So
So
I think that's a great selling point for us. But for the
I've got
rest of the
that Thor
fans,
bod.
yeah, I've got the body of an Asgardian god. But I didn't understand it. Like, this is actually a big thing, because a lot of people are making jokes about it. Like, okay, so women say they're going to see Avengers for the plot, and they show a picture of like Thor in his like his prime, and they say, "Well, this is the plot," and then people down below will be like, "Ha ha, the plot thickens." Right,
Exactly.
and making all these jokes, right?
Right, right.
And I would not be surprised if it is mostly the women who are complaining about the state of Thor. Um, I'd love to get some feedback on that if anybody knows, but I'm pretty sure the men got it. The
Mhm.
women are probably the ones who are upset.
Right, right. But yeah, I mean, I do like overall the story was good. Um, it is a nice ending to, I like the fact that, the MCU from phase 1 till now this is the end of phase 3. Yeah.
Yes,
Um it began with Iron Man and it ended with Iron Man.
yes, that is a major spoiler.
Spoiler alert, everyone. Again. But yeah, it's so yeah, but everyone who's seen it knows that this is probably a plot hole that I noticed right off the bat, even without trying to think too much. Um the fact that they made so many goddamn gauntlets.
Yes, yeah,
Like
that was
so,
an issue.
in Infinity War, Peter Dinklage's character, the space dwarf, whatever his name was.
E tree.
Was he? Yeah, Eitri.
Something like that.
He makes so Thor, Rocket, and Groot go to whatever it is.
Never believe. No, I
Never
can't
believe,
pronounce
yeah.
it. Something like that.
The place where they basically make all the weapons. Mjolnir was
The
made
Dwarf
there.
Star. Yeah.
Yeah, they make all these weapons there, and he finds out that the Infinity Gauntlet was built there, and he's like, "Oh, this Thanos, he came here and he wanted this, and he killed all my brethren. I'm the only one here." So then so then he's like, I had to build him a gauntlet that was worthy of like handling the Infinity Stones. So it's like, oh, you needed like borderline magic to build this thing, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So he uses it in the movie. We all saw the snap, and then it's like wrecked, which is a
Yes.
result of like using it. There's a lot of energy that gives off.
Yes.
That thing was wrecked. Granted, it was still intact, but it was still pretty like beat up. In Infinity War, they build two of these things with Tony Stark technology, which granted, okay, Tony Stark's Tony Stark, but still, what did he build that stuff with? He just builds one that's like, it looks pretty much like just Iron Man technology.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it would fit any hand, and then it's just this big old metal gauntlet, and he puts the stones on there. So again, spoiler alert, they build a gauntlet. They give it to the Hulk, who is actually not the Hulk anymore. It's
Professor Hulk.
Professor Hulk. So Bruce Banner and the Hulk basically find a balance where he's still smart. He's still Bruce Banner smart, but he's also the Hulk strong. Brain and brawn.
Thanos actually, beat some sense into him, apparently.
Literally.
Literally.
People have said, like, when you just watch the Hulk in general, like, he's strong, but the way he fights can be very chaotic.
Yes.
Whereas if he had a little brains behind it, he could probably deliver a few punches.
Sure.
Excuse me. But they're figuring, so they give, which it kind of makes, it both makes sense. It doesn't make sense. I don't get why they had him use it. I was hoping like, oh, he would just use the gauntlet and he would heal because of his Hulk powers. He can heal from injuries.
Yes.
Well, that didn't happen.
No, it didn't.
So he uses the snap to basically bring everyone back, but then they had to everyone's wondering how the stones were destroyed. Then they do the whole time travel thing to get the stones. I was wondering what the whole time travel thing was to begin with,
right?
Because I heard it was going to happen. They were hinting at it happening a few times.
Yes,
but I thought maybe they were going to do something along the lines of going back in time and changing events of the other movies.
Right. Which is kind of what they did without actually changing the events, but
they go back to get the stones, which wasn't really taking the stones out of the timeline. It was just like displacing them or something. They somehow, Thanos catches wind of this idea past Thanos. And here's what I also don't get. So, they could actually like hold their own for the most part against, Infinity Gauntlet Thanos, right?
Right.
This was Thanos without an Infinity Gauntlet. And everyone's got new suits, everyone's got new powers, they're all stronger. And all he's got is this double-edged sword, and it's
taking him out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had, again, more spoilers. So they're shooting, what was it? The Thor-powered blast from Iron Man.
Yes.
Oh, just spin my sword so that gets blocked.
Yeah.
Right.
I think in retrospect, they had to do that. Otherwise, the story was not consistent. So like the point you were making about the gauntlets, I had that same issues. Like this guy had to go and use the same material that Mjolnir and Stormbreaker made out of to cast the gauntlet powerful enough to wield the stones,
which was still wrecked.
Right. After. Which got basically got its gauntlet handed to it. And somehow Tony Stark, all right, even if you're using vibranium, he cast a new Iron Man suit style gauntlet. Okay, maybe I could get away with that. maybe I'll even give the Hulk the ability to do the snap. Although apparently, as we've seen in previous story arcs, these stones are so powerful, just one touch, and it's like a massive explosion, as we saw with Guardians of the Galaxy, for instance, with the Power Stone. So it's a stretch, but I'll allow it on the Hulk. It became implausible with the final scene of the movie, which was with Tony Stark.
Yeah, he just had one built into his suit. He just grabs the stones, and he so again, it's another spoiler. When when the Hulk is grabbing the stones and he has the gauntlet, just even having the gauntlet on, he was like almost collapsing under the energy that was surging through his body.
Correct.
I mean, the radiation was just fucking up his body.
Yes.
Maybe so. Then Tony Stark does the same thing. So there's this fight over the gauntlet. This new gauntlet they build. Like Thanos is going to take it and like, hey, I'm screw. Basically, tries to change his plans. He's like, well, you snapped everyone back. So obviously I won, but I also lose. So screw all of that. I'm just going to destroy everything. Start the universe from scratch.
Yeah.
He takes the gauntlet and he's about to snap, and you see the stones aren't on the gauntlet anymore. So then you see them on Tony Stark's hand.
Yeah.
And without even missing a beat, he just looks at Thanos in the eyes and says the whole "I am Iron Man," snaps, and the whole army of Thanos disappears, including Thanos. I thought they would. I was hoping they'd keep him around and like imprison him or something, because that'd be the good guy thing to do.
Right. No, he's too dangerous, too powerful.
Excuse me. Yep. So they pull him out, and no collapsing into the surge of the power. At least initially having the stones on him, unless they make some like stupid argument like, oh, his suit absorbed the energy.
That's a real stretch, all things considered.
So I'm thinking, okay, there could be something to that. Like, so like when he gets hit by certain energy sources, he absorbs it.
It's given the hype around the stones, it's very, very difficult to kind of see that come together.
Because the stones themselves, we've seen they pretty much circumvent any sort of special powers people have. Yeah. The Hulk could heal. Well, he never healed from using it. Yeah. Thanos just kind of stayed injured when he used it. And so as a result, of course, because Tony used it, and Tony is just a mere mortal, dies. So then
I mean that is the ultimate climax to the story arc. Sure.
A funny thing, the day of watching the movie, I think I told you this, I was like scrolling through YouTube, and just randomly spoilers are popping up in there. Like YouTube will autoplay certain clips when you're scrolling through on your phone, and it just starts autoplaying like Tony Stark snapping. I'm like, no, I'm not supposed to see that.
I was the same thing. I've got a friend. He's kind of a cunt because he went to see it the second day it was out in New York, and he puts up on his Facebook, "Rest in peace, Iron Man." And I'm like, you fucking idiot. I mean, I kind of knew, but like, why do you have to be that kind of prick? Right. And I blocked him on Facebook. It's just like, no, fuck you. This is, there's a special place in hell for people like you,
I mean, when your ad campaign is #don't spoil the Endgame.
Yeah, exactly. For fuck's sake, man. That was a real shit movie. I mean, I kind of sensed it, but like, I'm one of these guys, I don't watch any of the trailers past maybe the teaser, because I don't want any kind of expectations of the movie, right? I want to try and have as real an experience as I can when I'm in the theater. And if you watch too many trailers, you kind of get a sense of the movie, and you kind of, oh, this is going to be shit, So I didn't want to do that. And this motherfucker just ups in my business, and he decides to give away like one of the biggest plots of the movie. And I was like, no, fuck this guy. Can I briefly touch on the two other problems that I had with this film?
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, there are two other big issues that I had with this film, and I mean, you and I have discussed these, so I'm just gonna touch on it really quick.
Yeah.
And the listeners are more than welcome to offer me their, their nerd hypothesis, their geek hypothesis on how this shit was handled, right? Well, the big one is basically, in order to get the space stone, you had to shatter the Tesseract, right? So we saw that when Thanos first got his hands on the Tesseract from Loki, he holds it in his hands and he crushes it, right, to get the space stone that's
Which is in the
inside.
middle. Yeah.
Right. So, needless to say, when the Avengers went back in time, they got the Tesseract. Obviously, they smashed it, and they used the stone in the gauntlet. We've just given away the whole story. But the final point of this thing is that they have to return the stones to their, like, the original point of which they left them in order to kind of let the continuation take place. But the problem is you smashed the Tesseract, right? And do we as far as we can see, when well, I'm like, the final thing of the movie, I don't think we should give away. We should leave the people with something. But when they tried to return the stones, it was just the stones. They did not reconstitute the Tesseract. They didn't even the Mind Stone, which Loki was using in the I think the first Avengers movie, was part of the scepter. That was what was, I think, in Vision. That was also something that was smashed by Ultron to create Vision.
Yeah, it was in the scepter that Loki used, and
Right,
the fact that, and which is where they got it from.
Correct, but you still smash the crystal, because that's what Ultron had to do. He crushed the gem that was on the staff to get the Mind Stone that was in it. So that's my two beefs. But when they're returning the stones, they don't reconstitute the gem of the Mind Stone or the Tesseract to put back into the archives. They at least all we see, it's a case with the stones, and I'm not going to say who and all that, because that's kind of like the real final spoiler. I think we should leave the people with something. Yeah. But I think the fact that they couldn't reconstitute the casing for those things really bugged the shit out of me, because you've how do you explain that? Like, one day it's a Tesseract and then it's just the space stone. Like, that makes no sense. You've completely diverted the timeline at that point.
Yeah, I wondered about that, especially even like so like the ether, the reality stone, was not really a stone. It was more of like a fluid or something.
Yes, correct.
What did they do? So part of what they do is they go to Thor the Dark World and get the stone. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get it out of Natalie Portman. And I was like, what did they do? Go back and put it back in her?
Yeah. That's literally, that was the plot. So the Rocket actually said that's what they were going to do. So literally, that's what I assume. But that's the easy one, all right? Apparently, it could transverse between ether and stone somehow easily. I don't know. The Tesseract is a different story. The Mind Gem is a different story. Those at the end, I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, that makes no sense. And yeah, that really bugged me as well. But I tried to give it a pass. I try to just be like, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. Be entertained, Brook. Be entertained. But yeah, those are kind of like my final gripes with the film.
Right. Yeah, it's just. Anyways, so yeah, it. How many out of 5 stars? What would you give it?
I'll give it 4 out of 5. No, I'll yeah 4, 3, like 3.5 maybe.
I'll give it a solid 4.
yeah, I mean, it could be a 4. Maybe if I watch it again, I'll be a little less.
Infinity War is a little bit better, though. I'm starting to kind of see that. I mean, purely for the satisfaction and the enjoyment of just watching the whole story wrap up.
Yes,
I'd give it a higher. I give it a higher rating just on that. But as a movie as a whole, standalone movie.
No, I
not
agree.
As good as it could have been.
I agree.
Even without all the plot holes. Like you were saying, the build up wasn't quite there. You get a couple of cool moments in there. They do have some pretty good like fan moments in there, which is I liked.
I agree. Me too.
Um, we might, I don't know if we will ever talk about the movie again in the future because there's a lot of interesting, even more things. Like, so the whole thing with Captain America, a couple of things with Captain America, a couple of
Yeah.
things with how they're going to move forward with so now what is phase 4 going to look like?
Yes.
Obviously there's a new Spider-Man movie coming out this month, uh, which is supposed to take place after Endgame, actually.
Is it? Is it? I mean, that was something else that bothered me, and I hope they explain it, because in the trailer it shows that all the kids are there and they're all the same age, like nothing has changed.
Oh, when in the course of the movie there was a 5-year gap.
Yeah, there's a 5-year gap, so it's basically kind of implying that all the kids must have died, so or were snapped out. So it's
Or at
gonna be
least
a
all the
little
kids at
weird.
Peter Parker's school.
Yeah, and that's it's kind of weird, but
Anyway, so then the Far From Home is supposed to be taking place after that, but then I don't get why does Peter Parker not have his new
Iron
Iron
Spider.
Exactly. Why doesn't he not have that? He has his old regular just suit. So yeah, there's that. And then there's going to be a Captain Marvel 2. There's going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yes.
Black Panther 2.
Yes.
And supposedly a Black Widow Origins movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's going to be the Disney Plus streaming service with all of, I think, WandaVision, the Loki show. Maybe there's a Hawkeye one too. I don't know.
And I think that there's an Asian one, like Chan, the rise of Chan something or whatever. For diversity points. Can't remember.
I mean, I know there's like a handful of like Asian characters in there.
It's a Bruce Lee knockoff character. I can't remember. I'll take a quick look and see if I could find.
It's not. They're not going to make a little spin-off about Wong from Doctor Strange.
Oh, is it Chi movie? Let me see. Yeah, Shang-Chi as first Asian lead in the MCU. So Shang-Chi. And it's basically Bruce Lee. It's a Bruce Lee adaptation.
Gee, who would have guessed? Another Bruce Lee spin-off. But yeah, so
the question everybody wants to know, are you wearing an Iron Man Avengers shirt? That's pretty
like an
geeky.
old comic. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I'm sure the ladies really love that shirt.
Yeah.
So the question on everybody's mind is, are you going to be as enthused watching phase 4?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's kind of my sentiment as well. I kind of feel
I will do my best to watch as many as I can to basically keep up with it. Even the ones that might get a little SJW like.
Right.
I personally will. I know we talked about this too. You said you might not watch some of them. Yeah, I will. I want it because I do want to try to keep up with it. But then it's like there is something to be said about the fact that this has been going on for 11 years.
Yes.
I think we're done, or at least a lot of people are like, okay, I need to chill out a bit.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, back to back Infinity War movies. Well, Avengers movies they had, because Infinity War was same time last year.
Yes, it was.
And they actually shot, it's funny, they shot Endgame before they shot Captain Marvel.
That's correct. And they kind of added her in, after the fact. And then there was like a rewrite.
Yeah, they shot her into the movie before she even started Captain Marvel, so she wasn't even really into that role so much yet.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But yeah. Yeah, and now the stuff they threw in there, like the feminist stuff, do you think that was a lot? Not so much,
I mean, I know the scene that you're talking about where it's like all the vaginas, I mean, all the ladies come together. Because if I had said all the vaginas come together, this would suddenly be a Pornhub episode. But so I caught us, at least I didn't say that on the air. But yeah, so I know the part that is like, was it too much? It was overt, it was obvious. I didn't particularly it was, I mean, it's too convenient for me. I really tried to give it a pass, but I understood what this was. It's like, okay, this is their nod to the Council of Vaginas, just to get the women's.
Yeah, so they show a scene where all the women are like fighting, not fighting each other. I mean that'd be just sexist, but
or sexy, depending on your lighting, I suppose.
There's a scene where they show like all the women, and somehow in some movement, some turn of coincidence, they're all like they're all in the same place and are about to fight a bunch of enemies. And what I don't get, so everyone there except for one could actually fight.
Right.
Mantis. What the hell was Mantis gonna do in that fight? Is she just gonna reach out and put people to sleep? If she can't even get close enough, because it took her a bit. She had to like actually like, put a little effort into putting people to sleep. So what's she gonna do? You see all these girls are all walking like, we're gonna fight, and then she's just kind of, I'm going along like.
Yeah, I know the scene you're talking, and I am worried going forward, especially after Captain Marvel. Now, I think, did we discuss Captain Marvel? Not really. I mean, I mentioned that I saw it. The big problem I had with the Captain Marvel is that she didn't have any real conflict. It's the same problem that I have with Star Wars, like the character of Rey. Rey can just do everything. She's had no real opposition. She's had no real failure. She's never had to overcome anything. It's the same thing with Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel just overcomes things by becoming stronger. And that's a shit plot. I mean, that's why it doesn't really work for me. So when we saw that foreshadowed in Captain Marvel, I'm really, really worried that the stuff going forward is going to be filled with this kind of failed storytelling.
Yeah, I didn't like her attitude too much either.
That's how she is in the comics, though. She's kind of bitchy.
The whole, there's other people in the universe too. It's like, yeah, but I mean, there are people here too. Like,
yeah, she's supposed to be quite bitchy in the comics. I've never followed Captain Marvel. I don't care about Captain Marvel. I will not be seeing Captain Marvel 2. But to be fair, I probably wouldn't watch the other Spider-Man. I'm kind of Spider-Man out as well. But I'm really worried that going forward, it's going to be a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very likely. Very, very, very likely. I mean, they're already movies in general are just starting to go downhill because people want to appeal to something.
I mean, it's all of them. It's all of the big franchises. So Star Wars has gone down this road from The Last Jedi. Doctor Who has gone down this road with the female Doctor,
which actually is supposed to be an Arab transabled individual.
Right. There we go. Right. The warning signs were there in Captain Marvel. So it just seems like every kind of sci-fi. Oh, not to mention STD, right? Of course, this is not sexually transmitted disease, but I actually mean Star Trek Discovery. But if those two things kind of add up in the same place, so be it. But yeah, STD on television is another steaming pile of progressive horseshit. With all this kind of thing. I mean, I cringed through the first series. I went on to try and watch the second one because I know they brought in Christopher Pike and it's a little more reminiscent of the original series. I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And 20 minutes in, there's this girl power moment like, we're going to save the captain, right, girls? And I just went, click. That's enough Netflix for today. And that was the last I saw of that.
Is that on Netflix for you guys?
Yeah, it's on Netflix for us. Yeah.
No, it's not even. Yeah, we have to get the old CBS whatever, whatever it is. Yeah, I just haven't. I mean, yeah, a while back I watched it. I think an episode or two, and I was like, Just for the sake of like just the feeling of a Star Trek series, it just wasn't doing it. I mean, even Star Trek
Correct.
Enterprise, for as much as some like diehard fans will have problems with that, I could still enjoy and watch that.
I agree.
They were experimenting there, but it was still something you could watch. Star Trek Discovery was just, let's take J.J. Abrams, his Star Trek, and apply some SJW points and completely go away from the traditional sort of Star Trek story arcs.
Correct.
Just, I mean, they could have just followed, the typical. I think you and I've seen this. The every sci-fi, every like mainstream, like big sci-fi show has the episodes. The Groundhog Day episode, the Matriarchy Society episode,
Yeah.
the Dying Planet episode, the Incurable Disease episode. There's always you've seen that, right? Oh, there's always this kind of episode in every show. The trial episode, the super advanced alien episode, the
time travel episode,
the time travel episode, the parody episode.
Yeah, I mean, and it's written into pretty much sci-fi lore. I'm just grateful that Stargate avoided a lot of this, because I mean that would have been really shit if they went SJW on Stargate, because I loved Stargate back in the day. But yeah, I mean,
because they only made it to what, like 2010 ish.
I think it was 2000, might have been 2010. Stargate SG-1. It became I think one of the longest running American sci-fi series, just behind, Smallville kinda. I think Smallville did 9, but Star Trek did 10. No, Stargate did 10. So yeah, something like that. It beat out Next Generation. But yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. If the STD was not Stargate, if they called it something else, right, and it didn't have the baggage of the lore and all this other kinds of stuff, I might have been more willing to give it a pass. But again, when you're doing these prequels and you're doing things out of time and you have such established canon, it is very, very difficult to just like take it seriously. It is so out of tune. And the best example of that I could give is Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis versus Stargate Universe.
Universe didn't even go that far off, though.
It didn't, but the whole feel of Universe was very dark. It was more Battlestar Galactica style, which is what they were going for. And to be honest, at the time, I hated it. Looking back on it now, I've come to appreciate it, and I understand what they were doing. But because of the established canon, it was so out of place. And that's exactly what happened with the STD.
And then, of course, they had to throw in some extra bits to keep it interesting, like boobs.
Yeah. And I mean, do you watch The Walking Dead?
No.
Okay, well, neither do I. But a very well-known internet personality, of whom I'm hopefully going to be meeting next weekend in Birmingham, is a guy called Robert Frank. Goes by Robert Frank 615. And anyway, he's a big fan of The Walking Dead, and he actually pointed out, again, I don't really follow it. Zombies, I don't give a shit about zombies. Zombies are the most boring things on the face of the planet. He pointed out that even in The Walking Dead, there is this SJW push where every couple is either interracial or homosexual, lesbian, trans, something. There's no normal, like 2 white people, 2 black people, nothing. It's all these convoluted relationships. And he says even in that sense, it feels forced. It just feels like they're kind of shoving it into everything. Now, it's, as I say, there's nothing wrong with interracial relationships. It serves the plot. I really don't care. But if it's like overt, yeah, it gets tiresome. It definitely gets tiresome.
Like the interracial relationships you see. So the ones you've seen, like Star Trek Next Generation, Chief O'Brien marries that Japanese girl. There wasn't really much. They didn't really force it. It just kind of, they met and they got married.
Yes.
End of story. Star Trek Deep Space Nine does one. So we know Worf is a Klingon, but also like underneath that, he's a black guy.
Yes.
The actor. He falls in love and gets married to this girl named Jadzia Dax. Dax is her last name. Dax is supposed to mean is the name of the symbiote. So she has this similar to the Gould, but it's
Right.
like it's a symbiote that is in her species, basically gets passed on to live multiple lifetimes.
Sure.
It's a way that they can basically become these better individuals.
Right.
So she holds the Dax symbiont, and it's like 300 years of memory. So one of her only just her one previous her previous host was a ambassador, diplomat, a huge political figure involved between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. So a respected name among Klingons. So now she has all this Klingon knowledge bringing into now she's a girl who before was as a guy.
Right.
Falls in love with Worf because Worf likes all that.
Right.
They tied that in perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one episode where they touch on the fact because her species can join with these symbiotes. People get married, obviously, and they have a thing in a code of conduct, so to speak, a sort of where if they when they get married, and let's say one or both die and they have to move on to another host, they cannot what they call reassociate. They can be friends.
They can't go back. Right.
It's considered taboo to sort of continue old romances from past lives.
Right.
Well, they touch on this in an episode where Dax, who was a husband to another symbiote, so these two symbiotic, what they call joined Trill. Trill is the name of the race. They joined in a couple previous lifetimes. They were married.
Right.
A few lifetimes ago, they meet each other again. A lot of those old feelings sort of flare up again.
Right.
And they almost go basically breach and become associate with each other again.
Yeah.
And because now they were both in girls' bodies, there's a scene where they kiss, and they say it was pretty much the second most controversial episode in Star Trek history. First being the Kirk and Uhura kiss.
Here the first being interracial kiss.
Right, and now here's the first lesbian kiss.
But it flowed in the story. Like I remember there was an episode where they met a race of people who were like genderless.
Oh, right.
So I mean they kind of touched on this stuff, but it kind of fit in with the story. That's not what's going on now, right? Especially in the UK. Like oh my God. I mean, what is coming out of the BBC? And I don't mean Big Black Cock. I mean the British, Broadcasting Communist Party. I mean British Broadcasting Channel. These guys, everything is interracial. The ads, every commercial is a black man and a white woman. They did an entire documentary series about the Roman Empire where Caesar was black and like all of the centurions were black. And fine, I have no problem with that. But at the same time, you're completely like everything is like that. You're writing Northern Europeans out of their own history. And it's like so overt and in your face. It's downright offensive. But this, I mean, it's heavy pushing from this is state-run media. They're stuck on an agenda. Man. This is what they're doing. That's probably why I don't watch TV, because I don't understand British television.
Not worth the TV license, huh?
No, it's not. And I only watch Netflix and Rick and Morty and a hell of a lot of YouTube, and that's kind of it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Boy, I mean, what is their annual budget? Do you know, the BBC?
I think it's like £5 billion £8 a year, or no, I think maybe that's how much they get from the licensing fee. It might actually be more because a lot of these productions are very expensive. But they do some quality work. They do some good historical stuff. But these fucking crows. But yeah, their television programming has gone to hell. Everything is pushing an agenda now, and it's all about like female directors. I mean, there was some TV series. I think it was like, I can't remember what it was. It was a story about a woman's husband goes missing, and I don't even remember it. But at the time, I had a girlfriend, and she made me watch this thing. It was like Finding Faith or Finding Grace or something like that. And it was the most boring piece of television that I'd ever seen. And like every 5 minutes was a musical interlude with like some, ethereal, happy kind of music. These chicks like, chick flick movies where she's reflective and she's looking out into the fields and stuff. And you can just tell a woman had written this shit. Because that's 5 minutes of where there could have been plot development, character development, story, tension. But no, you need to give the woman a moment to breathe and reflect and feel what this moment holds. And I can't count the number of times I fell asleep watching this garbage. That's what's going on, at the communist channel. It's ridiculous.
Oh boy. Let's see here. There's something else we were gonna.
Did you want to touch on the YouTube purge?
Oh right, that's right. The new purge.
The purge part 2.
Well, so you mentioned the YouTube purge. Who got purged from YouTube?
All right, so there's a lot going on the face of social media at the moment. Full disclosure, the UK has just had a couple of elections. There's one coming up in, I think, the 23rd of May. We're in May, right? Yeah. This is the 23rd of May. We vote for what's the MEPs, which are the members of the European Parliament. For those who are familiar with the YouTube character of Sargon of Akkad, also known as, his real name is Carl Benjamin, and the Nazi pug gassed the Jews gentleman by the name of Mark Meacham, right?
Count Dankula.
Count Dankula, right? These gentlemen are actually running for the office of the European Parliament, the MEPs. And these people, so Carl Benjamin, Mark Meacham, and I believe maybe one other, have been expunged from Twitter. And in violations of like social media interference into the elections. So that was kind of the first crux that was taking place. And I think, they're both parts of the UKIP party, United Kingdom Independence Party. So that was kind of the first thing that we saw happen. And then a couple of days later, another figure, his name is Tommy Robinson. That's not his real name, but he's known as Tommy Robinson. He's a gentleman out here, working class guy. He's been slandered by the media. His case is very complicated, misunderstood. He speaks out a lot about the issues of radical Islam and radical Muslim agendas in the political space. He announced that he was running also, not with UKIP, but independently, I believe, as an MEP. And he has a huge following in the United Kingdom and a lot of support in the US as well. Same thing. Completely removed from Twitter. And now, more recently, the cabal over at Facebook and Instagram has decided to remove Tommy Robinson, Paul Joseph Watson, Milo Yiannopoulos, what's the black supremacist guy in the US? Farrakhan.
Oh, because and that's actually one thing that intrigued me. So they Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson,
Alex
Milo,
Jones, yes.
And then Louis Farrakhan. And then they say, YouTube, Facebook bans far right. Farrakhan is not far right.
No, he's not.
He's been pretty big in the left for a while. Until recently, when people on the right started to pick up, like, hey, this guy kind of hates Jews, like a lot, and white people. Maybe we shouldn't. we
The enemy
shouldn't.
of my enemy is my friend sort of shit. Is that what
It
they're
was
doing?
like, well, it was like, maybe we shouldn't associate with this guy. That's probably what they're trying to do. Is like, no, he's been far right the whole time.
I mean, I don't know very much about Louis Farrakhan. I know he's very controversial. I'm not going to listen to these people.
In Living Color did a skit about him. They had one of the Wayans brothers play him, where it's so Living Color was big one was pretty much Jim Carrey was like kind of the main guy on there.
Yeah.
So they did a skit where Jim Carrey was Captain Kirk,
Right.
and he's on the bridge, and they, of course, they say some alien is, coming aboard, and then it's Louis Farrakhan, like comes in through the door, and he starts basically like talking to all of the minority crew members, starting to empower them.
Right.
And
Liberation.
yeah, like like he's like, looks over at Uhura and he goes, "My Nubian queen," and she's kind of like, you know, he's like, "You're," she's like, "I am," the third officer. If Spock is, if he's second in command, I'm third in command. He goes, "Are you really, or are you just like a glorified secretary?" Because she's always on the earpiece. And she's like, "Hold on a minute." And then he goes over to the equivalent, the Sulu character, and he's like, "When was the last time you got anything? When the captain gets all the women?" And then he goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna get mine." So then he's just like liberating,
Right.
kind of joking, because I think back then probably they were trying to kind of joke about the fact that like how like it was probably like a playing on him, but also probably even joking on Star Trek a little bit, that even in their enlightened philosophy, they were still,
kind of
not
barbaric and
still not
racist
quite
and
still not
bigoted.
quite pushing it hard enough. Like, yeah, I mean,
Sure.
Deep Space Nine, you had a black captain. Voyager, you
Commander.
have he turns captain
Oh,
halfway
okay.
through the like couple seasons in, he gets promoted to captain. So
But I've
it
never
was
watched Deep Space Nine, so
right. It was kind of, I think it was kind of showing like Starfleet, like if like a commander could technically be in command. A
right.
captain
Okay.
was more for a ship because he was just commanding a station.
Yes.
He got promoted later on. So then they have that, and then of course the female captain, Janeway and Voyager. And then a female second in command in Enterprise.
Right.
So they had that. I mean, and even like, when you saw in Star Trek Next Generation, when Picard would meet with other captains, he met a good handful of female captains.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to claim any kind of racism when they're aliens walking around. I mean, this is what Star Trek has always had that was very progressive, but not to get too far off the point about Farrakhan and these guys. Like the gloves are off, right? The social media companies, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I don't know who else at this point. The gloves have come off. They're not even pretending, right? They're trying to say now that, oh, well, we always take, people who violate our terms of service off the internet. No, these people have been on these platforms for all this time. And it's only now that, they're getting some notoriety and possibly into political office and there's also an election coming up in the United States, and Alex Jones and others were kind of seen as instrumental in helping get Donald Trump elected.
Right.
This looks exceedingly partisan. And again, they cannot point to any one individual that these people have done that actually shows it's a violation of the terms of service. So I don't know what's going to come of it. I saw that Trump tweeted out Paul Joseph Watson, and he's concerned about this whole thing. Hopefully, he will remove the protections of basically calling them a platform and turn them into a publisher, because that's what they're doing now. They're regulating what you can and cannot see, like a publisher, like a newspaper now.
Yeah, I still have to look into this more. I know some of my connections, other libertarians that I know are starting to really speak up on this. Like, okay, how to address this whole "they're a private company, they can do what they want" argument.
Correct.
Because that's kind of going around. Like, so if
it's coming from the left all of a sudden.
Yeah, the left
they
always
care about
the
property
left is
rights.
well, they're starting to defend corporations.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah. It's like, oh, so Twitter and Facebook can just ban whoever they want, but fuck the millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah. So I mean, how do we address this? And I think it's going to take some kind of a judge has to declare that they are no longer a platform, because they're actually taking responsibility for what people see and other things like that. So they're a publisher. They're like a TV company or a newspaper or something like that. And that would make them subject to damages and liability and slander and all of these other types of things that people, if you're misrepresented in the papers,
treating them like a real forum, basically, right?
Correct. Like a publishing company. And if they do shit, you can sue them for damages. But as long as they're under the pretense of a platform and they say, well, we don't really monitor what people post, they're not on the hook for anything.
So what you're saying is we're all published authors.
I mean, it's pretty wild. I mean, I don't know if obviously most people are not following UK politics. Like, we just had a huge shakeup in the local elections out here, where the two major parties is Conservative and Labour. So it would be like the Republicans and the Democrats. Not exactly, but close enough. And both of the major parties have failed to deliver the largest Democratic elected issue of, I think, in the history of the country, which is Brexit, which is Britain's exit from the European Union. We were supposed to have left on March the 29th at midnight or whatever the case might have been. That was enshrined in the withdrawal agreement. Then they passed Article 50 with that as a deadline. Obviously, that has not happened because we're well past that date. And for some reason, we're still in this shit. And it's so bad. In fact, there's a group of people who have taken that Article 50 piece of legislation to the high courts and basically said, the government is out of order. We left on the 29th of March. Like, this is the law they passed. We're going to make them stick to it. And that's what's going on. But on the grassroots, we just had the local elections. And it was the first time in my life that I actually did a protest vote. I didn't want to spoil my ballot. I voted for somebody I have nothing in common with. I disagree with on everything. I think the only thing we have in common is that we both really love the community that we live in. I know him personally, but we don't agree on a thing. And I voted for him. And I mean, if my libertarians friends found out that I did that, they'd probably lynch me. Well, not really, but it was a protest vote against the Conservatives, who are the ruling party, who have failed to deliver Brexit. And just to give you a sense of the outrage of about 3,000 or 4,000 councillor seats that are across the country, the Conservatives lost 1,300 seats, and the Labour's lost like 300 seats.
Wow.
It's just like people are like, fuck you. We do not trust either of you. And a lot of it, a lot of people spoil their ballots. So like some people wrote, Iron Man dies at the end of Endgame and shit like that on their ballots. A lot of people spoiled their ballot in part of the protest, and we're still waiting for the numbers to come in to see how bad it really was. But the Conservatives have lost a monumental amount of seats, and the Labour Party. So both major parties have lost tremendous seats. Now, ironically, a Remain party got a lot of votes, but it wasn't that people voted for them. It's just that nobody voted for the major parties. And as a result, they just ended up with more votes. So it wasn't like a rebuke of Brexit. It was just nobody supporting the Brexit parties, in other words. And that's what's literally gone on out here in the UK. So with the advent of the social media censorship and all this other kinds of stuff, it's getting very tense out here, especially with the European elections coming up on the 23rd. And that's Nigel Farage has a party. It's the Brexit party. UKIP, and that's where Carl Benjamin and Mark. I think I'm butchering his last name, but it's not Meacham. It's Meekum or something like that. These are the guys running on the 23rd, and it's assumed the two major parties are going to get wiped out. Nigel Farage and possibly UKIP they're gonna take the tide of this thing. And again, sending a very, very loud, powerful message to the powers that be that give us what we voted for. And that's why we think there's this clamp down on, especially the British side. So Paul Joseph Watson and Milo and these other guys,
Now, speaking of a lot of that, now I heard something about, because I've been sending you some of these screenshots I'm seeing of Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad and stuff. Is he's just trolling them at this point, isn't he?
Yes. He's actually doing what Trump did, right? He doesn't have a lot of money for a campaign, right? And as I say, UKIP had a decent following. It's kind of a butchered party because since Nigel Farage was like the cult of personality, he's gone. So a lot of people have kind of moved on. So Carl is using basically chaos theory to try and get exposure, which is exactly what Trump did. He has things that he says that are controversial, and the news just would not stop talking about him. Right? Trump got millions of dollars worth of free press just from them always slandering him. Right? That's
right.
So Carl Benjamin is kind of doing the same thing. Now he has made some rather controversial points. I don't necessarily agree with. Like one of them is out to a Labour MP out here called Jess Phillips, and it's kind of controversial. She shut down a men's debate on the issues of male suicide and like male issues, and basically said like you can get your conversation about male issues when I get equal representation of women in parliament. And she kind of scoffed at the whole thing. And in response to that, Carl Benjamin made a statement, pointed at her that he wouldn't even rape her. Right? Yeah. But more recently, in a video sit down with somebody who knows Jess Phillips personally, he came and demanded an apology from Carl. This is all on his YouTube video, and Carl is like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I will apologize to you, this gentleman, if you were offended by what I said, but I don't believe I can make an arbitrary apology for this lady who she didn't really care that he said it in the first place. And, that the media is demanding that he apologizes. He doesn't believe that's being done in good faith. And I tend to agree with him. But then he goes on to say, like, the amount of pressure he's getting from like the media and all these people, he said he might reconsider not raping Jess Phillips. But he says, I don't even think there's enough bear in the country that would really ever make that happen, as kind of the joke, right? It's a joke that he's making. But the article this morning, he was condemned by the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, who basically says that in his understanding, and Jeremy Corbyn is a fucking moron, he basically says, oh my God, this candidate said he might rape this woman, completely ignoring the context. Like, but I don't think there's enough alcohol in this country to ever make me want to do that. And he's condemning it like we can't let this person get into politics and all this other nonsense. Just showing the complete disconnect of these people. But
right,
that's what Carl is doing. He's using the press to get exposure. People are looking up what he's saying. He's getting a lot of views and a lot of attention. And of all of the internet personalities, I think he has the best chance of actually getting elected. So
that'll be interesting.
It would be. And I don't know much about Tommy Robinson, I think he has a good chance also, but there's a lot of legal stuff because that's not his real name, and you can't really run a campaign without like giving your real name, sort of thing. So I think there's a bit of a legal issue in that respect. But holy fuck, if Tommy Robinson walked in to the European Parliament, I mean, that would be the end of the European project, right? I think people would resign their post on principle. The whole thing will collapse. The euro will go to zero. It would just we would have been dodging a bullet. We wouldn't even need to leave the European Union. It will implode on its own.
Oh boy, that'd be the day.
Yeah, and it's as Brian Monroe is saying in the comments, it's all complete bullshit. The media is just flagrantly just lying and making shit up about Carl Benjamin, about Tommy Robinson, about all these things. Even Jared Batten, who is the present leader of UKIP, has come out every time he's criticized about these people. He's like, why don't you bring them on the television and ask them what's their position, what's happened, this, that, and the other. And the media is, they have no interest in that.
Yeah, a real debate with real ideas, a real discussion on what matters. No.
Like actually giving these people a chance to speak and share their opinion. And I believe this is why mainstream media is dying. I had this conversation with a friend of mine. Have you ever been on TV, Amos? Have you ever like done an interview or anything like that?
In Taiwan.
Right. Was it like a random interview, or were you like brought to a studio?
Random interview.
Random interview. Okay.
Yeah, it was brand new, so it was pretty much state of the art school that opened, and me being a biracial kid caught their attention, and they're like, "Hey, let's interview this kid. He looks white."
Oh, your white privilege was showing. Okay.
Exactly. All the way around the world, my white privilege helped out. No, yeah. But yeah, anyways, yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done some TV spots and stuff like that, and it's such a waste of time, right? You get maybe 10, 15 minutes to make a point. They have these, question time and talk show kind of things where it's kind of bullet points, and you don't really have a lot of time to really get into anything. And of course, the media, as we've seen, can spin it any way they want, right? We've seen that with Jordan Peterson. We've seen that with, Dave Rubin more recently. And they try to get the talking point. They try to get the people to fight, to get something interesting for the television. And it's all bullshit. And this is why it's dying, because people now can go and listen to a podcast, much like what we do here, or go on YouTube and hear these people long form discuss what's really going on, what they really believe, what they think, etc., etc., etc. So I'm supposed to believe a headline in one of the scandal sheets out here, like The Guardian, which I wouldn't even want to wipe my ass with their paper, instead of this man's own words discussing in length like the issues of Tommy Robinson or Carl Benjamin or any of these other people. And that's why nobody trusts the mainstream media, because everybody can do that now and they can see through all of this nonsense.
I was about to say, you wouldn't even wipe your ass with The Guardian.
No, I probably would. If ever I did buy it, I would purposely use it as toilet paper. That is a trash rag.
Yeah. Now, what was it that Sargon of Akkad called them? Smear merchants.
Yes. At the interview, when he was brought forward, he did call them smear merchants, and that's what it is. It's all hysteria. It's all, they're trying to get that juicy headline. And I mean, to be fair, there are still a lot of people out here that only read the headlines and they believe what's in the papers, right? They're usually called progressives, right? And they're always going to have those people out here. But for people who are a little more savvy, they like internet commentary and stuff like that, and I think that's a growing portion of the population. This whole empire of media lies is falling apart really quickly.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, It's a miracle that people even watch news still. I mean, local news, I'll get that. Because even your
Sure.
local news, I mean, even the local news where it can be like, have its political leanings,
Yes.
it doesn't. They don't get as much into the commentary of things. They just kind of, you know. And today, President Trump, spoke at the White House today where he did this, this, and that, and the other. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas it's like in national news, it's like, a lot more commentary, we'll say.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been watching. Do you watch CNN? I don't know if you watch CNN. You couldn't pay me to watch CNN. Like I would wear dark
Well,
shades
you
in the
you
airport not to watch CNN.
you could pay me to watch CNN. I just wouldn't enjoy it that much. If anything, I'll get a kick out of it.
there's some. I don't know the guy's name. I think it's a gay guy, black guy on CNN. Can't remember his
Oh,
name.
uh, I know who you're talking about too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You could look him up in the meantime, but I think he had on like not a Trump, not just a Trump supporter, but somebody in the Trump administration, and the man went full retard, like level 4 uh TDS, right? Trump derangement syndrome, like full on green men, orange hair, just totally lost his freaking mind on a live interview on CNN. He just went apeshit. And this is the kind of toilet trash that we're dealing with. Now, unfortunately, out here in the UK, Trump is not very popular. People are just buying into the rhetoric and stuff like that. So there are a lot of people who don't like him. There are a lot of people who do, but yeah, he's not a good topic to discuss out here. It's very divisive for no reason whatsoever. There's no justifiable reason to have the amount of animosity that people have for Trump, especially when you consider people like the Sultan of Brunei or the Saudi royals have all visited the UK and nobody bats an eye at the shit that's going on in these people's countries. But Trump, for whatever reason, virtue signaling, he's the devil. It just makes no sense.
Don Lemon.
That's the dude. That's the guy. Full on Trump derangement syndrome. He must be receiving chemotherapy for the severity of his injuries. I mean, it's just an entirely other level. I mean, I thought Mad Cow was not Mad Cow. What's her name? The chick that thinks she's a man. Rachel Maddow. That's it.
I'm like the chick that thinks she's a man.
Right.
Wow,
I'm
that's a
sure she's a
lot of people.
lesbian. I think she's on MSNBC and she was like really harping on the Trump conspiracy shit. I thought she was off the rails even after the Mueller report came out. She was like still pushing for it until I saw this guy on CNN.
Well, yeah,
And,
they're I mean, even when they did the hearings in Congress, uh, Bill Barr, Bill Barr.
Bill Barr.
Yeah, so they're talking to him,
Yeah.
and he's looking over the report, and they're just like trying to get him to say things, and you know, he's like, I don't think there's anything going on here. It's a cover up. It's all a cover up.
Yeah, when
mean,
you don't get what you want, it's a cover up, right?
I mean, the Democrats are approaching Alex Jones levels of conspiracy theory. I mean,
Yes. I mean, they put Maxine Waters in charge of the finance committee. I don't know if you saw that fucking circus. And she's complaining about student debt. And we have a mutual friend who complains about student debt all the time. He doesn't even understand what the fuck is going on. The private companies have gotten out of student debt in the United States back in like 2008 or somewhere around there. Right? It was reduced, it's been reduced, and it's become a government program. So everybody's like, oh, the evil bankers. Da, 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 da. No. It's the government took over the student loans.
well, yeah. I mean, I think we talked about this where I mean, it's just a basic understanding of incentives. When companies, industry, just corporations in general see the government is like backing something, they're like, hey, government wants to give us money in this sector. So what do? Try to get more money out of it. if I found out that there was a way that I could get money from the government, I mean, well, I mean, we've talked about it, as a libertarian, I think it's my moral obligation to get as much money from the government as I can.
Yeah,
Um,
reduce the amount of overall theft that you've had to encounter. So get it somehow.
yeah, I mean, that's the one way. I mean, if Andrew Yang does get elected, I'm getting that $1,000 a month. I don't care. I'm not, yeah. Anyways, but yeah. So what was it when we talked about? Oh yeah. So if the
Student
government
debt.
if the government comes along and says, "Hey, we're going to give you $5,000 a year for
Yes.
students," then the schools are going to start charging, 5,001. Not literally,
Yeah.
but they're going to charge more.
Correct.
And you have basically this bidding war of, well, we'll give you more money. Well, we'll charge more. Well, we'll give you more. We'll charge even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
you have what, $50,000 a year to some schools? Like, Jesus Christ, people.
Correct. I mean, that was, I might do a video on this as well, but I've shared this story with you before. When I first went to do a business administration degree back in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago, I paid about 1,200 TT dollars back then. So about 200 US, right? I paid it out of pocket, and that was per semester. That's how much it costs to do a business administration degree. Then the government opened up with free grants up to 10,000 TT dollars, which is about, say it's 1,500 US per semester. So what do you think automatically became the tuition price of every school around the country? It all went up. Every school started charging the maximum amount. They all went from 1,000, like 200 US up to 1,600 US overnight. No new facilities, no new teachers, no new curriculum, nothing. It was just free money. And that's how this cronyism works. And universities are notorious for this because, especially in the US, they're all tax-free. So there's some university campuses that buy buildings in the community. They're exempt from all kinds of taxes, property taxes, and profits and all this other kinds of stuff, to the point where they're starving the community from any kind of tax revenue because they can't raise money on the university. The university is literally sucking all the money out of the community. That's the bullshit that's going on.
When it comes down to it, there's still a decision to be made about student loans. And regardless of what you think about predatory loans and their practices and such, there are still protections in place.
Agreed.
But you still decided to get a loan.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, yeah, I don't get how you just, yeah, there are, the system doesn't quite favor those, who made a poor decision, at a point in the past, but a decision's still made. And
I think in a lot of ways, yeah, go ahead, finish up.
Well, yeah, no, I see that. I'm of course referring to our mutual friend. It's just, yeah, you get this push to. It's like, oh, so we want more government. That's what it's becoming. Is we need what is it? The whole thing now is student debt forgiveness.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And it's I think the student debt is what, $1 trillion.
It is the second highest thing we owe money on. It's houses, of course, but that's always been there.
Right. Yeah.
And then student loans, actually.
Right. Okay.
It's beat out credit cards and car loans.
And I think the problem, I mean, maybe you could speak to this more than me because I'm a little far removed from the college generation. But I mean, when I was growing up, it was always kind of dictated to us that you had to get a degree in order to get a nice, safe, secure job, right? That was the rhetoric. And until I read the book Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I realized that's a lot of horseshit. Thank God I read that when I was 18. Um, Life and circumstances, I never ended up going to college. Right, I never completed. I did a year at the business administration. I did a year of law, but I never completed. I never got a full on degree, and I'm kind of grateful because the debt load would have been pretty ridiculous at the end of the day. But that's why kids are pushed into it. They think in that narrative still exists that you go to college and you make like $1 million more every year than a person who doesn't go to college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that's still being pushed in like Americana in like the Midwest and stuff like that?
Um, yes, still pushed. It's just, yeah, it's gonna be pushed for a while. I mean, there is a slow an inching development of more and more kids starting to hear like, hey, did you know trade schools exist? Did you know like getting jobs that are willing to pay you tons of money to yeah, the companies that actually want to pay you to get training and certified in something that will make you more money in the long run.
Right, right. Yeah, the trade
Um,
schools, accounting stuff.
I've got friends that have worked with trucking companies,
Mhm.
and they'll work in like the dock or the warehouse or something for like a couple years, and then positions will open up for truckers, and they'll say, "All right, we'll train you to drive semi trucks on site. We'll pay for your licensing fees. You take the test, you pass, you're a driver for us." That's like thousands of dollars worth of training and just that whole thing. Taking classes and all that, the licensing, CDL license, basically just full size driving, and
They make
companies
good
are
money. Yeah.
and companies are dishing this out. And I mean, even though there's going to be the whole automation problem in the future, they're still pushing for this. The shortage of plumbers, electricians, contractors in general. Fewer and fewer people are getting those kinds of jobs.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, I think there's a shortage of drivers I mean, I look at the um, transportation in the US as a good indicator for financial activity. And I know there's a shortage of drivers. And as a result, it's actually unsafe for a lot of these guys because they have to do longer hours. They're tired. So the automation stuff, yes, that's going to be a huge issue, but it might actually be a saving grace at the end of the day, for a lot of these guys.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, we could probably do an entire episode about college and trade schools, and there's nothing wrong with going to like state schools. Like, I think for you guys, if you go to the in-states university or like the community college, you could start your degree there at a much cheaper rate, and then
Go to
like do your
community
last
college.
year. Yeah,
Go to the community
go
college
ahead.
for 2 years. You get either you can get an associate's degree, or you just get your general education credit. You get your general credits out of the way. Then you use that and then you go to a state school for like 2 years, which is cheap. And if it's a good enough school, it's a good enough degree. They're
Yes,
not going to charge you up they might. I mean, it depends. But that whether or not they like charge you up the ass for tuition, you only have to pay for 2 years. And
right.
then, whether it's through some sort of financial aid or grants or even scholarships or just the fact that you save so much money over your community college, you have a little bit of money to get yourself started. Um, you could start right away to start working, or just you don't have to pay off that much. But now it's, um, across the big picture, you have people that are like they're taking out loans for anywhere between like by the time they graduate, they're either paying anywhere between 60 to $250,000 worth of student loan debt or some shit. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, for the
um
Ivy League schools, Harvard and Yale and
yeah,
stuff.
I
Yeah,
mean, but even high end schools aren't even that, not even Ivy League. you have your, high-end private schools or even just expensive state schools. And then kids that aren't working while they're in school either.
Yeah. Like one of the last guys I know graduated Florida State. Was from Trinidad, and he paid for his entire education working tables at some local restaurant in Florida, in the university kind of town, and he was able to pay for his entire tuition. Now this is, I don't know, 30 years ago. No, maybe not that long, but it's somewhere around there, between 20 and 30 years ago. Um, it's all changed now because the government is just throwing money at universities and they just keep raising the tuition.
That's another thing too. Is this there's a whole meme that goes around. So there's this animosity between the boomers and the millennials.
Yes.
And then you're seeing like oh if I have to hear another boomer say when I was your age I worked a part-time job and I could pay off my college, and now you have to work like however many more. So we're gonna blame. So the millennials want to blame the boomers because all the boomers ruin the economy.
Right.
And
Not
then
entirely false, but not entirely accurate either.
yeah, economies don't work that easily. It's
Yeah,
not just
exactly.
one big problem. It's
It's
so then
inflation, it's government policy. The boomers are protecting their wealth, so they created all these regulations to keep wealth, and we reduced competition, prices went up, and it's very complicated.
yeah, but there's this whole meme now is the millennials blame the boomers for the shitty economy they're in, therefore don't try because it's all the boomers' fault. And
Right.
then the boomers are going to start blaming the millennials because society is going to shit because social justice.
Right.
And yeah, yeah. So
It's a vicious cycle. It's the snake eating its own tail. It's just chaos and confusion. And I don't think that the millennials aren't entirely wrong. That the economy has changed so drastically. I mean, my parents, when my dad went out to work, he got a house, he got a pension, he got all these wonderful perks. I think they even got him a car, you know, back in
but was he
this
actively like trying to destroy? Like, was there something that the group we know as the boomers, what were they doing that actively
right.
messed with the economy?
Yeah, definitely the regulations started creeping in the 1970s and the 80s that stifled the competition. Right.
Are
That
you are you are you saying more government?
No, I'm saying that's when the more government started. It's
But
the
I'm saying,
boomers.
is the problem was more government.
Yes, the boomers started to, I mean, the wealthy group, they started to lobby the government for protections to protect themselves and their shareholders, thereby cutting off competition, creating a lot of these, per se monopolies. And that's what started to drive up prices. Now, in the case of education, yeah, whatever. I don't know when the Ministry of Education in the United States was started, but I think it was around that time. It was around whatever period. They took the model of California and they tried to do this huge monolith of control from uh, kindergarten all the way to like
12th
PhD
grade.
level. Yeah,
Oh,
no, like
PhD.
all the way, like go to PhD. And they decided, well, we're going to impose this on all the schools all over the country, and they created all these new administrators, and costs started to go up to maintain this bureaucracy instead of letting each school run independently. So there were a lot of things that the boomers did that they thought was making things better were actually making things worse. And the housing thing is definitely part of it. The environmental lobby came in. If some two-faced cockatoo turtle shows up in somebody's yard, that person could lose their property because of the environmental laws, because now their house is a protected sanctuary. So that's where the shoot, bury, and forget movement has started, where people are killing all of these endangered species because they don't want to lose their property to these types of things. So all of these things that they thought were really good have just made it really, really tough. How are we doing on time? I think we're over.
We're about there. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
just one last thing on that is it's just funny how so the boomers created more government
Yes.
and now the millennials want more government.
Yeah. Like, how much fucking more do you want? I mean,
Now what's
the bureaucracy is a never-ending creep. That's just a fact.
I don't know what's gonna be our kids, what they're gonna be what's their generation gonna be messing around with, you know.
I'm actually quite concerned. All right, like I was talking to a friend of mine, well, my Russian friend, and Russia has a plan to disconnect Russia from the entire internet. I posted an article about this. I'm
What?
not exactly sure what this is about. But the UK have said the same thing. They want to basically unplug the UK from the internet and pass everything through like this massive sensor bureau, and they can watch your traffic and follow what you're doing and all this stuff. Russia wants to do the same thing. It's
What?
getting bad. It's getting really fucking bad. I mean,
Man.
I think in a couple of weeks we're gonna have to start getting porn passes in the UK to watch porn. So this
Yeah. I mean, what?
this is the level of bullshit that we're dealing with. Um, and I am genuinely like the other day I was thinking to myself, like, maybe I really don't want to have kids and bring them into this shit, you know? Yeah,
Maybe
I've
you
thought
don't
about it.
even maybe even you don't even want to be there. You got to come here.
Yeah, I think like America is like the last bastion of, and it's not even great freedom, but some freedom. You know,
I
I don't
mean,
know. I'm just
the next you'd have to go to like Poland or something.
or Switzerland. I might consider Switzerland, but it's so fucking cold. Switzerland is like like the cantons compete in Switzerland, right? So that would be like where you live versus like the Twin Cities. They compete for people and be like, well, if you move here, we'll give you this tax rate. No, no, no. If you move here, we'll give you this tax rate. And they literally compete for their populations. And
Hmm.
because of that, you know, it's the one country where the politicians are actually afraid of their voters, because the voters really do have that much power. So
That's
I
good.
might consider that.
Well, awesome. Well, anything else you wanted to add real quick, Brooke, before we
We didn't touch on not a university student, so we'll save that for next week. And
real quick, she didn't come over. She is out of town for the weekend. So that's
okay,
all I have to say about that.
okay,
Still seeing each other. So but yeah.
cool.
Anyways, thank you everyone for joining us today on the podcast. Yeah, we actually had quite a few viewers today, which is good, and a lot of discussion in the chat. So thank you everyone for joining us, and definitely check us out on our other streams. Like, comment, and subscribe on the channel. Follow both of us on social media. Brooke is on Twitter at Brook_Potter, and in myself at Amos Joe. Check us out next weekend. We will be having a guest. We're still confirming a couple of things, so I won't say anything yet. But we're planning to have a guest for next week, which will be our 52nd episode. So check us out next week, Sunday, 11 o'clock Central Time, and we'll see you guys then.
Thanks for watching, guys.